this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive illusion, investigating the totally hidden, systemic mechanics behind skyrocketing private school fees in India. We're going to look at exactly how a system that is legally mandated to be strictly nonprofit has quietly morphed into a highly lucrative $110 billion market. We'll get into the regulatory loopholes, how mega real estate developers are turning classrooms into profit centers, and what this actually means for millions of families across the country. Let's just dive right in, and we need to start with the devastating reality on the ground, because we really have to look beyond the raw numbers to see the human cost here. This is a heartbreaking account regarding retaliation at Ryan International School in Kembur. When parents protested a fee hike, the administration didn't just target the adults. No, they targeted the children. Students were barred from assemblies, forced to sit on the last benches, and literally publicly humiliated in front of their peers over unpaid fees. It's an absolutely shocking display of how kids are being used as leverage to force parental compliance. And the thing is, this isn't just one rogue school or one specific city. The sheer scale of this crisis is staggering. According to a massive local circles survey, we're talking over 47,000 responses across 271 districts. 7 in 10 parents report facing sudden, massive fee hikes. We're looking at increases ranging from 30 to 80% over just the last 3 years. For an average middle-class family, a sudden financial shock like that is completely destabilizing. So why does this matter on a macro scale? Well, it matters because we're witnessing a colossal migration. Over 120 million Indian children are now enrolled in the private sector. That means nearly half of all Indian students have moved away from free public provision. And all of those families are feeding an education market that is currently valued at $110 billion. Millions of people, including low-income households, are paying a premium to avoid a public system they feel has failed them, only to step right into a heavily commercialized private sector trap. That brings us to Section 1, the legal illusion and the split entity mechanism. So, by law, K-12 education in India must strictly be a charitable endeavor. The Supreme Court has been incredibly clear on this. No commercialization of education, period. But that prompts a really glaring question, right? If schools legally have to be nonprofit, how is this massive wealth extraction happening out in the open? Where is the money actually going? How are multinational corporations, private equity firms, and real estate developers looking at 5-fold returns on their investments in Indian schools? The secret lies in a clever little backdoor mechanism called the split entity model. Basically, operators take a school and split it right down the middle. On one side, you have the licensed nonprofit front, which is usually a charitable trust. This entity holds the academic affiliation, it employs the teachers, and on paper, it makes zero profit. But on the other side, you have a for-profit operational shell owned by the investors or developers. This shell actually owns the land, the buses, the textbooks, the administrative software, the whole shebang. The nonprofit front then pays exorbitant rent and management fees to that for-profit shell. So every rupee collected in tuition flows seamlessly out the back door as a quote-unquote business expense. Now here's the real kicker. This extraction completely bypasses Section 23 of the Indian Contract Act. That specific section explicitly voids agreements that are designed to indirectly do what the law directly prohibits. You literally cannot legally extract commercial profit from charitable education in a roundabout way. Yet, because of weak enforcement and widespread regulatory capture, these split entity shell games operate almost entirely unchallenged. It's a goldmine for private equity to strip assets and relentlessly drive up fees. Let's move to our next section, the real estate nexus. To really understand the real-world impact of this structure, we need to peel back another layer of the onion and see how mega real estate developers are operating within this space. Take the Loda World School Network. It operates under a trust, but is closely aligned with a macro tech developer's real estate conglomerate. Their fee policy is incredibly rigid. We're talking a 50 rupee daily late penalty for delayed payments. And yes, that includes weekends and holidays. They completely reject cash or checks, mandating that all payments go through their proprietary digital portal for total transaction control. And those high tuition fees? They conveniently exclude basics like buses, stationery, and uniforms. It's a system designed to constantly corner middle-class parents with unexpected costs. What's genuinely fascinating and a bit terrifying is how this strict enforcement perfectly mirrors the behavior of their parent real estate conglomerate. Just recently, the Bombay High Court actually rebuked microtech developers for arbitrarily hiking maintenance charges at Loto World Towers from 4.5 rupees to nearly 10 rupees per square foot. When the residents protested, the developer just blocked their access to basic amenities. It is the exact same corporate playbook of unilateral hikes and access restrictions. They just copy-pasted it from apartment owners to parents and students. And this leads us to a really crucial question. Why does the ISCS curriculum in particular just not deliver in these setups? Well, when profit extraction is prioritized over governance, the actual delivery of education suffers terribly. Basic safety and compliance get completely compromised. At Loto World School in Palava, a criminal case was actually filed back in 2017 for operating without a final fire safety clearance. But even more concerning for parents paying top dollar for elite curriculums, RTI inquiries revealed allegations of completely unverified ISE board credentials. Parents were sold on the prestige of that ISE label, only to discover the credentials hadn't even been approved by the HRD ministry. It highlights how, in a heavily commercialized system, the educational product itself often fails to deliver on its most basic promises. Okay, let's look at Section 3, Regulatory Arbitrage. So you might be sitting there wondering, where is the government in all this? Well, we're looking at a major systemic failure, where the very laws designed to protect parents were systematically defanged. Schools use entirely hidden non-academic costs as a backdoor to bypass state tuition caps. They levy quote-unquote development fees of 10 to 20,000 rupees to skirt bans on captation fees, which are basically illegal donation demands. They create exclusive vendor monopolies, forcing parents to buy uniforms and books from specific suppliers, funneling kickbacks directly to promoters. Heck, during the COVID-19 lockdowns, a lot of these schools continued charging full transport fees while the buses sat completely idle in the parking lots. Let's look at Maharashtra as a prime example. Their 2011 Fee Regulation Act was meant to stop all this nonsense by empowering parent-teacher associations. But in 2018, heavy corporate lobbying led to amendments that absolutely neutered the law. First, they completely stripped individual parents of the right to appeal arbitrary hikes. Now, if you want to file a complaint, you have to gather signatures from 25% of the entire parent body. And incredibly, the amended law now allows school managements an automatic 15% fee hike every 2 years, entirely without PTA approval. And let's say you actually managed to organize that 25% to protest. As we saw earlier, the retaliation is just brutal. And the administration doesn't target the protesting parents. They leverage the children. Teachers will withhold notebook corrections. Kids get excluded from activities, assigned to last bench seating, and subjected to deliberate public humiliation. It creates a completely toxic educational environment where parents are terrified to speak out against the financial exploitation because they know exactly what will happen to their kids in the classroom. Finally, Section 4, Reclaiming the Classroom. So, we've seen the mechanics of the illusion, the real estate nexus, and the defanged laws. How do we actually fix these systemic loopholes? Well, simply de-recognizing bad schools, just shutting them down, is not the answer. That just leaves kids stranded and punishes the parents even more. We need proactive structural models. Look at Punjab. They instituted a strict 5% cap on hikes, backed by forensic audits and orders for retroactive refunds if schools overcharged in the past. Or Tamil Nadu, which set up a dedicated, transparent committee to evaluate and regulate private school fees way back in 2009. The ultimate solutions here require serious, aggressive, systemic action. We need mandated, state-led forensic audits of private school finances, and those need to be available on public portals for total transparency. Regulators have to actively start using Section 23 of the Contract Act to strike down these deceptive split-entity shell games and reclaim those diverted funds. And most importantly, we have to deeply reinvest in public education. If public schools become a viable, aspirational option again, the massive demand on private schools will naturally reduce, which breaks this entire cycle of exploitation. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to wrap up our explainer today. If education is truly a fundamental human right, and it is legally mandated to be a charitable act in India, why are millions of families effectively forced to pay a massive premium to hedge funds and real estate developers? It really makes you wonder who actually profits when the school bell rings, doesn't it? Thanks for joining me as we unpacked this complex issue today and keep asking the hard questions.